And so hopefully we had a good, enjoyable, long weekend in which you're able to kind of recharge your energy cells. Um, what I would like for you to do is maybe put into the chat, kind of like what was your highlight for this extended weekend. Maybe it was watching that football game, but perhaps maybe there was something else that you might have done, maybe something new for the first time. But feel free to put into the chat what that might have been. A couple things that kind of highlighted for me. One, yesterday during our professional development, the question was, when you're 7 years old, what was the number one song in the nation at the time when you were 7 years old? And for me, that puts me in 1974. And the number one song that on the day that I was born, so that would be May 16th, 1974, was one that kind of made me chuckle. It was by Ray Stevens, and the title of it was The Streak. In the 1970s, it seemed like there was a fad that people like to streak in the nation. And so Ray Stevens wrote a song about it. So it's good to see that there are some things being put into the chat. So fantastic there. So that was one thing. Another thing that kind of stood out was my son on Monday he's at the University of Minnesota, and he is an environmental science major, but he still wants to stay connected to music, and he is in the campus orchestra. And so over the weekend, he was having some difficulties with the vehicle. We know in Minnesota that if it gets cold out, especially several days in which it's negative, and you have a vehicle outside, you got to start the car whether you like it or not. You got to, at least get the car turned over. You don't have to let it sit there and idle, but at least take the time, prep it, get the car going. So once he figured out how to, get his car started and all that stuff, and coming home from his orchestra on Monday, he parks the vehicle, and then he gives me a phone call. And I'm like, I know this is not going to be good. And he sends me a photo. The window, the back window on the tailgate, the hinges, because it's was so cold over the past several days that it must have hurt the integrity of the hinges, that they completely snapped off. And he's panicking. He's got the window, it's just hanging there from wires and not knowing what to do. So gives Dad a call. Well, what do? I get in my vehicle and I drive over there and assess the situation, realizing, we got to replace it. Duct tape is not going to help. It's too cold to hold that. So managed to able to push it back into place here. Luckily, the hydraulic arms are still on it, and so we could keep that back window. And I drove it all the way back home. Window didn't pop out, but got it fixed. So that's kind of like my highlight or low light, perhaps, maybe over the 4-day break. But then also at the PD, knowing what the number one song was when I was 7 years old, and was called The Streak. So maybe a good thing for you to try to do is Google what was the number one song when you were born, perhaps. Maybe take some time to do that. And if you figure that out, put that into the chat. I'd be kind of curious to see what that would be, what the number one song was on the day that you were born. All right, so feel free to do that. Now, today might be a little bit longer because there's a few things I need to go over. One of them is with the hybrid model shift, so some protocols with that. Hopefully your hour one teacher had gone over some stuff. Probably feel very confident that they did. But I want to go over, again, what those hybrid protocols are, and more specifically about my class, IB history here. And guarantee that what I'm going to do with the hybrid model protocols in IB history in my class, Miss Iden will do the same thing. We tend to do the same things. We want to be on the same page, and we'll do that. Of course, I want to spotlight Black history as well. And then take care of Canada, just put some finishing touches on Canada, and then move on to our new case study dealing with the Great Depression in Mexico. All right. Anyone have any words of wisdom before we start? All right, there we go. A little Beyonce. I had a student that when in my senior class, when we had a little bit more time, we could do current events on Friday. And if there was ever an entertainment question about a group, she always would put Beyonce there. All right, so there we go. All right, I want to go over just a few of the protocols here. So hopefully this looks familiar during first hour, but this is our schedule for the next several weeks. So starting next week, we'll have 11th and 12th grade here. And then that first week in March, we'll have 9, 10, 11, and 12 here at Park High. We'll be on the AB schedule, and Fridays, as we can see, Flex Fridays will really be February 26th and then March 5th, which is the end of the trimester. Starting next week, we'll start with a B day. We'll go BABA, and then we go to the normal AB schedule with that. So that's kind of like, what our schedule looks like for the first for the remainder of the trimester. Now, again, the overview of the school day will be following the bell schedule for all students, whether you are learning in person or from home. So you have to be aware of the bell schedule. And in a 5-day week, you'll have 5 days of content loaded for each class. That will take approximately 75 to 90 minutes of work per day. So know that there's going to be some stuff that you're going to have to do. And sometimes it might be direct instructions from me. Other times, give you time to work on the material. All right. And we have so far been looking at the Great Depression and the case study on the United States and on Canada. And so the time has been very well spread out, and the pacing should be good. So you should be able to keep up with that. Know that you're going to need to keep that energy going. All right. Now, what is it about for my particular class here? So this is what it's going to be. I foresee myself here that we're just going to keep the standard pace going. We're going to be synchronous learning will be the model for IB history class starting Tuesday, or really just staying in the current mode of operation. Class will be taught live Monday through Friday, and this includes Flex Fridays. All right. So remember, if you have any questions or concerns, always feel free to put into the chat your question, or just unmute and let me know. So synchronous learning is our mode of operation here. And so Flex Fridays are instructional days. They're not optional. They will be instructional days. So put that also into your frame of thinking here. This is different than hybrid at the beginning of the school year. All right, so Flex Fridays are instructional. Instruction is 5 days a week. All students, all right, all students hands-on deck here. All students will need to attend class every day. That's the AB groups as well as the AB VLA groups. Everyone is on board, just like what we're doing right now. I'll set up in my classroom, my laptop, camera up there in the front, so people at home can see me and see what's happening on the screen as well. This is how I will be taking attendance. So if you do not show up, you'll be marked absent. And so that's just like distant learning. And if you are absent, please watch the recording of the class sessions. Okay. And that you can find the class sessions as always in the course resource folder. And if you have questions or concerns, always, always, always come to office hours or just send me a message. And I usually am pretty responsive, and I usually give you a quick response, unless you email me or send me a message at 11:59 p.m. Sunday night. That might be a little hard for me to do. All right. So our schedule, I think the big difference for our schedule is we'll be starting 25 minutes earlier. So that means period 1, it will be at 8:35. And then we'll have a 75-minute class period. Then there'll be some time in between the class periods in which, for me, sanitize the classroom, get it ready for hour 2, which is 10 o'clock to 11:15. So our class will actually start at 10 o'clock. So it also is a different start time. So make sure you kind of put that in your memory here. And then period 3, you can see, and that's where the lunch is happening. And so hopefully your third hour teacher today will tell you a little bit about your lunch schedule. And if they don't today, hopefully tomorrow they'll do that. Office hours, you can see, is 1:30 to 2:15. And then flex Fridays, 8:35 to 8:55. And for our class, it's 10 o'clock to 10:45. So just be aware of when we do have those flex Fridays, is it, if we're going to have advisory with it, are we going to have embedded health? Just adjust accordingly. And your day ends at 11:45 on Friday. All right. Any questions or concerns related to this? Feel free to unmute, share your thoughts, or put into the chat. If things do come up between now and tomorrow, because tomorrow I'll review this again, just please let me know. Let me know. All right. And we can discuss it. All right. So I'm going to move forward here. And what we have for today is I've got the spotlight on Black History, since this is the month in which it is Black History Month. Want to focus on that piece there, and then get back to looking at our case studies on the Great Depression. All right, our spotlight today. Oh, sorry. Actually, before that,
Track.
I'm going crazy here. All right. Safety protocols. Safety protocols. Excuse me. I had one thing left. Safety protocols. I think the big takeaway here is I'm not necessarily going to show this video because we did see the video. The point here of the safety protocol videos with Mr. Farley is, one, when you come walking into the school building, you have your mask on. All right. And that's wearing it properly. That's covering the nose. So you have proper, that you're properly attired with a mask. If for some reason you don't have a mask, remember, you can get masks at the front desk, and also your teachers. We all have we all have masks that we can give you to use as well. So you need to have that piece there. Social distancing is important. Remember, in the halls, you got to follow the arrows. So there are directions, or they're directing the traffic certain ways. Avoid congregating in large groups, obviously. So we look at the safety protocol: no hanging out, no roughhousing, all that stuff. In the halls, bathrooms, there will be bathroom passes, but of course limits on how many can go and use the bathroom. So we've got those protocols. And also remember, when you come into the classroom, the desks, how the desks are situated, and you'll have an assigned seat. The way the desks are situated is we should have enough distance from each other. All right, so trying to maintain the safety protocols. I will also post this on Schoology, so if you want to watch the dynamic video, you're more than welcome to. All right. Wilma Rudolph. Now, old enough to remember Wilma Rudolph, more in her non-athletic days, but still a champion for Olympic athletes, accomplishments of women, as well as accomplishments for Black women. So Wilma Rudolph had the title as the fastest woman in the world. All right, and so we can think of women athletes today and their magnificent accomplishments. Wilma Rudolph, in some ways, represents perseverance, overcoming obstacles, and ultimately having success here. So you can see that she was born in 1940 in Tennessee, and this is the era of Jim Crow, so very, very, very segregated, Tennessee as well. One of 22 children, big family. Holy cow. My dad comes from a family of 8, but 22 survived polio and scarlet fever. Back then, those could have been life-threatening. Doctors told she would never walk again, but she becomes the fastest woman in the world. In 1956 Olympics, she won the bronze in the 4x100 relay. And then 4 years later, in the 1960 Olympics, 3 golds and 3 world records. Huge. 100-meter dash, 200-meter dash, and the 4x100 relay. So again, winning the race that she got a bronze medal 4 years earlier in. So huge. All right. Fastest woman in the world. All right. Now I got a little video clip here that we'll watch about her. Kind of gives a little bit more overview.
Track star Wilma Rudolph was the first American woman to win 3 gold medals at one Olympic Games. At age 4, Rudolph contracted polio and was left unable to walk. 5 years later, after major treatments, she was beating neighborhood boys in races. At 16, Rudolph competed in the 1956 Olympics and returned to high school with a bronze medal. At the 1960 Olympics, she made history, winning 3 golds in the 100, 200, and 4x100 meter races. She refused to attend her homecoming parade if it was segregated, so her victory celebrations became the first integrated events in Clarksville, Tennessee. Rudolph's legacy extends beyond track. I would be very sad if I was remembered only as Wilma Rudolph, the great sprinter, she once said. To me, my legacy is to the youth of America, to let them know they can be anything they want to be.
Okay. So a little bit more about Wilma Rudolph there. Interesting thing also, and it's just another example of Jim Crow and the separation of the high schools that you would find in some of the deep South states is prom. Prom would also be separate. They would have different ones, and that would carry on for into the early part of the 21st century in some areas. So very extraordinary as well. But Wilma Rudolph. So
Track star Wilma.
We always like to have some type of quote that kind of encompasses some of their views. And so never underestimate the power of dreams and the influence of the human spirit. We are all the same in this notion. The potential for greatness lies within each of us. So again, here, when we look at accomplishments and we look at being able to achieve goals and all that stuff, it doesn't necessarily reside in one group or another. It's something that is within all of us here. And again, when you think about Wilma Rudolph and where she came from and some of her early obstacles and how she persevered and overcame them, that is just tremendous. And so she becomes a very influential role model for others that will continue in her path in athletics, but then also in activism after their playing days. Any questions about Wilma Rudolph? Okay. So with Canada and the Great Depression, just a little quick wrap up with Canada and the Great Depression. If we were to look at or to assess and the way the Canadian government approached the Great Depression, and we compared their assessment to that of the United States, whose approach seemed to be the most successful in dealing with the Great Depression? The United States or Canada?
I'd probably say the U.S. because a lot of the changes that I've seen that were throughout the Canadian side were either reverted or the effects really didn't have too much damage, or they were damaging to the Canadian economy.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Those are really good points, Zach, that you brought up. Anyone else? Think that the U.S. had a better approach, but maybe for different reasons?
I guess, well, to keep the chain going, another reason would be because of publicity. The Canadian side kind of had a feud with the civilians. The over public opinion of the government was declining from what I've read. While in the U.S., it was still low, but it was rising under Roosevelt rather than declining.
Okay, I think that is important point that you brought up about how does people view their government. Okay, and that's going to change over time and all that stuff. And looking at the United States and seeing how active FDR was in trying to find solutions and get us through the Great Depression. And sometimes it worked, sometimes they didn't. But at least, you know, the American public could fall back on the idea that the United States government is trying to do something. Where in Canada, it did seem to be very contentious. And the relationship between the Canadian people and the Canadian government seemed to be very disconnected. And that could speak volumes to the approaches that either Prime Minister King or Prime Minister Bennett had created here. And that could also speak to maybe how unresponsive they might have been throughout the Great Depression. All right. So I think we can make a good claim that the United States approach seemed to be one in which it was attempting to provide the relief and the recovery that the citizens are desiring. In both instances, we know that the Second World War is going to pull out Canada and pull the United States out of the Great Depression. But before that war happens, we can assess and look at some of those measures by the various governments that are doing what they're doing. All right. So with Canada and the Great Depression, you can almost just say, you know, they are floundering and piecemealing their measures to try to create some type of relief here. And they kind of work their way through the 1930s. But ultimately, that Second World War will happen. All right. Now, moving on to the new assignment, which I did open up today, and it's called Great Depression in Mexico. So I would like us to go to Schoology here and find the assignment. And I will share my screen so you can see it. And so we have Mexico in the Great Depression. And so what we want to do is get an understanding of the global impact of the Great Depression on Mexico, and then ultimately look at their approach and how effective their approach was. And this assignment will be due this Friday. Even though we don't have school, it's still due this Friday. The assignment, it has two attachments to it. One of it is the actual assignment. The other one is the reading that you'll use to help find the answers. All right, so the assignment looks like this. And here's the reading. Now, looking at the Great Depression during Latin America. So if we want to focus on Latin America here. It's going to be a lot different, and then perhaps maybe what happened in the United States and in Canada. And what we can really look at is what is going to lead up to the Depression here. And that Latin America, in many ways, is in some ways insulated from some early international affairs, perhaps maybe because of their openness in their economy. During World War I, it did provide opportunities for Latin American countries like Mexico. And the recovery in the 1920s, though, in Europe had little impact in Latin America. The instability of the commodity prices led Latin America to increase production, which, we do see increased production in the United States and Canada in the 1920s. And to rebuild their economies, though, Latin American countries had sought out loans, which seemed to be the kind of the mode of operation. Increase production, loans, all that stuff. And most of the region relied on exports, and Mexico was going to rely on exports. When the Great Depression hit in 1929, Latin American governments saw their markets dwindle, all right, for their products dwindle. The industries contracted, stopped importing. Countries began to stop importing minerals that these countries like Mexico were producing. And the governments began to default on their loans. What we do see, though, in Latin America as well as in Mexico, though, is a shift in another form of nationalism, and it's going to be called economic nationalism. And in Mexico, what's going to be unique in Mexico is that Mexico had a revolution in 1910, and here it is, 1929. The stock market crash happens, global downturn occurs. Mexico is still going to be in what we call the consolidation phase of the revolution. And so when the Great Depression happens, Mexico is still reinventing itself and trying to finalize some of the revolution. So the Great Depression is going to be handled differently in Mexico. And so that's what we really want to look at. Why is the Great Depression in Mexico going to be different? So with that, you're going to want to read the PDF, Great Depression in Mexico, which is this right here. And read the first 2 pages as an introduction to the Depression in Mexico. So it's going to build on what I've just said. There's a matrix below that should help you understand the Depression, and their government response. It's what we always are looking for. This is kind of like a cause and effect. Sometimes it can be the cause. You got to figure out the effect, vice versa. But again, use what I've given you as kind of context clues to help guide you in your reading. All right. And then, of course, don't forget to respond to the BHQ at the end. To what extent was Mexican government successful in their response to the Great Depression? So just like we've always asked about the United States government, Canadian government, we're going to do the same thing here about Mexico. How successful were they? All right. That is your task at hand. Is there a question on this? All right. So hopefully you'll have a good remainder to your Wednesday. Tomorrow I'll talk a little bit more about the protocols and a little bit about this activity, but then also maybe give a preview to what is going to be happening next week. And so you are welcome to stay on this Google Meet and ask questions. Just simply work as well. Or feel free, exit, have a great day, and check in with me at another time.